Two friends meet up to drink some beers and talk about past times. Not yesterday, but long ago, it's scandals, wars and crimes. From Stalin's reign to Prohibition, Tudors, Pompey, Bush and NASA's mission, Edison's bulk, Genghis Khan's rise to victory. Forget your old teacher, it's time for Pint-Sized History.
Hi there, and welcome to the Pint-Sized History podcast, the podcast where we talk through the landmark events that have shaped the modern world we live in today and over a few refreshing brewskis. I'm Joe.
And I'm Zach.
And we're back again after our mammoth ancient Greece two-parter. It's still in the thick of the summer, and we've got a classic British topic right up in store for this one. Only a one-parter too, so it's just something we're going to fucking get in there, get out, and have some fun along the way. Am I right,
That's
Zach?
nice. That's nice to just put my episode and say, get in, get out. Fuck dwelling on it, you know. We don't listen to your voice for too long. Let's cover it as quick as we can, and then we'll leave as soon as possible.
No, you're
Thanks.
right. Let's mull over this episode for a solid
let's
few
really
hours,
mull.
shall we?
Let's mould wine this episode.
Right.
Because we are Pint-Sized History, Joe, I just do want to ask, because I've probably asked it before, but what is your favourite beer?
Wow.
Or your favourite alcoholic beverage, for that matter?
60 plus episodes, and you've not once asked me that question. No, the answer is probably...
I know what you're going to say. You're going to say a pint of Asahi Super Dry.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that, but because I don't know what my favourite drink is. It changes, I guess, over time. But I would say that the best beer I've ever had, which I'm not sure if I said before on here, but you do know the story because you just said it, was when I was 20, turning 21. I was in Tokyo and had the smoothest, crispest pint of freezing cold Asahi in a
that
random.
sounds so good.
It was like the most random place with like
good.
no, it had no advertisements on the door. We just stumbled across and heard like jazz music, and we opened the door and we go in, and it's just like this really smoky Japanese bar. There's literally only one bartender, and he goes like, "Come with me," and he takes us into this gorgeous little cubicle, literally just our own room basically with this lovely table, and then he asked what would we like. We look at the menu, say the Asahi Super Dry, and it was, like I say, the best pint I think I've ever drunk. So
That's
I
nice.
guess if you, but I don't know the answer to my favorite beer. I guess I would, for that reason, Asahi, but I honestly don't know. What's yours?
A Guinness, I think. I think Guinness is just my
Wow.
favourite beer, yeah. I love a Guinness. I've got many Guinness t-shirts saying lovely day for a Guinness because I'm a fucking really baked guy. I think I used to have a white t-shirt with a toucan on the back, which is like the Guinness the Guinness smell, yeah.
Back in the day.
But I can't wear a white t-shirt without getting it stained, and I'm pretty sure I stained it. I've never seen the light of day again. But here I am wearing
You're
white
wearing
t-shirt
one now.
today.
But you've not once drunk a Guinness on this pod. I don't think I've ever seen you with a Guinness.
It's because I don't really like canned Guinness. It's just I don't think it's anywhere near as nice.
But have you not? If you're such a Guinness, one of those.
I've got a Nitro Surge, which is like that
why
thing
don't
you
you
put
bring
on,
that?
you tip it, and it's because they've stopped selling Nitro Surge cans. So I bought like a 40 quid device which you put on and pours it properly. and also beyond that, the actual cost of the Nitro Surge cans is like double the cost of a normal Guinness. So it's just a fucking, it's like a Ponzi scheme that I got drawn
Yeah, I was
into.
gonna say,
It was great in like lockdown, but like since then it's not really worthwhile investment. Anyway, let's skip the chit chat. The details.
Okay.
I'm very bored of you, Joe. I want to get stuck into the Battle of Hastings.
That happens at least once every pod.
Absolutely. But before we start, again, just a bit of admin.
What?
If you'd like
Fucking hell, man! The whiplash I'm getting. Which way are we going? Are we
if you'd
starting
like
this pod or
to
not?
leave a review and like and subscribe and follow us
Yes.
and tell everyone about us and how great we are,
Yeah.
then that'd be fantastic. We've had a
Yes.
lot of new followers lately on Instagram and quite a
We
few as
have.
well on Spotify. Because of our Irish stuff, which people seem to love. People love the famines and starvation and deaths in Ireland. Which
It's
is...
not. I don't think it's that. I think it's they love two Brits basically slagging off the British Empire for the atrocities they did.
Come on! That's all we do here.
What else did you do? Come on, what else did you do? You withheld food. What else did you do? Come on, say it.
All we do is slag off the Brits. So I guess we are not very I'd like to see myself as quite patriotic person, but I'm.
So would I. I'd say I'm quite patriotic, but but that doesn't mean you can't slag off, what the atrocities we did.
Blind
I'd hope
faith.
that a patriotic
Blind faith.
German would be able to, slag off the Holocaust.
So the 1910s were so great, yeah, and the 1920s were really good too, and then the 1950s, I guess, were good as well.
Good
And
as
1960s.
And I like Angela Merkel. She was...
Are you missing a 20-year period? No, I don't know. I couldn't even say. It's been
No, that is not fair to the Germans. The Germans accepted, unlike the Japanese, the Germans very, very much accepted their past and did not pretend it didn't
Unlike
exist.
the Japanese.
No, it's true. I think that you got to give the Germans some credit because they don't pretend that didn't happen. They actually fully just admit it. So
Great country,
good
though.
on the
Strong
Germans.
history, and
Love
also
the Germans.
undermined. unlawfully, unjustly undermined.
Undermine what? Sorry.
For just their history, you know. Nothing wrong with what they did. Nothing wrong one bit.
Nothing wrong. But then
No. 281,000, Joe.
Okay, well, I think I need to add Joe in the edit. Could you please add? We need to have this for every episode where we just have I don't know,
Zach is Jewish.
a voiceover AI or something.
Zach is a Jew.
Morgan Freeman going just so you're all aware, Zach is in fact Jewish. Just every episode, just so that they know that you're not actually being a total anti-Semite.
Absolutely, but, I'm not. I'm Jewish. I'm not anti-Semitic. Although my dad does call me a race traitor for reasons
not just your dad. I've seen
other
other people call you a race traitor, yeah.
You could probably guess why, but let's not talk about it right now. The Battle of Hastings!
Let's guess. Let's guess.
Let's not guess.
Back to the subject that we started this with, Zach. I will just point out that, firstly, thank you and welcome to those Irish new followers that we did get. It's quite nice to see all the comments and a lot of people attacking Zach for his pronunciation of certain Irish words.
Drada.
Well. So,
I think it's Drada.
Drada.
Not Drogheda.
Drogheda.
Yeah, let me just
header from Drogba.
I don't want
Didier Drogba's greatest headers.
Drogba!
But no, thank you to you guys. And I don't know, in terms of the patriotism thing, I think I feel quite patriotic. It's just that I think you really should be able to talk about the bad things your country did and also be patriotic about the good things your country did. So for all the bad things to Britain, we're also very proud of how we acted in World War II, wouldn't you say, Zach?
Yeah, we've had this conversation before multiple times, haven't we? You know, if the Empire was us at our worst, World War II was us at our best. Although
Dresden, it has to be balanced.
Maybe Dresden, you could say.
Well, pretend Dresden didn't happen. But I guess my point is, if those Irish followers that came expect us to just slag off Britain every time, we're still very proud of our country in many different ways. We just can also accept that we were total mugs in many different ways, not just to the Irish, but to any thing. But anyway, that's a long topic.
Can be even more proud of it now that we've got Andy Burnham in charge, King of the North.
Yeah, and you're Scouse as well, right? Am I
right?
But
he's an Evertonian, though. He's a toffee cunt.
That's right. So you support Liverpool and he supports Everton. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's a classic thing that Evertonians say that only people from Liverpool support Everton, and all foreigners or all people that aren't from Liverpool support Liverpool. But really,
where'd you grow up?
Well, my dad's from Liverpool. Yeah, I grew up in London. I grew up in London because I moved to London.
Sounds right to me, Andy.
Hang on. I'm just saying. It's just because the Evertonians don't know that no one actually supports Everton outside of Liverpool because they're a shite club, an awful shite club.
Although they were
very cool. And you go to Liverpool, everyone supports Liverpool, but it's just there's so few Evertonians compared to Liverpudlians, compared to Liverpool fans that they have this sort of superiority complex, despite the fact they never won anything in their whole
That's not true.
club. Everyone won quite a bit.
Everton won lots.
They were amazing in the 80s, weren't they? Anyway, fuck Everton. We're talking. let's crack on. Today we're talking about the Battle of Hastings. Now I'm sure many of you listening today, given that around 50% of you typically are British, will know a lot about the Battle of Hastings because we're all taught about it. We're over 50. We're all taught about it in school. It is probably one of the first things that we learn about as a collective, as a young buck, opening our eyes to the world of history and English history. If you tell it a certain way, which is what the history curriculum typically does, talk about how proud William the Conqueror comes over and defeats the sort of dastardly Harold Godwinson. Spoilers for what comes to happen. It's quite like a light story when you look at it in one way. We're obviously not going to look at it today in a very light lens. We're going to look at it through. We're looking at it through the overall objective sense of it. But yeah, you can teach it to kids in a way that's quite fun and light because it is a story of someone coming over and conquering and changing everything, and it's not.
And it's
also
dark. Just a really important topic. I mean, if you're an international listener, which we do have quite a few, and you haven't heard of this battle before, this is one of the most consequential moments in our country's history by far. Because what happened, and I will try to avoid spoilers, but the impact of this battle changes how our monarchy system works, and from then on, we consider the 1066, which is the year of this battle onwards, as the first of our lineage of medieval, Middle Ages, feudal monarchy system, all the way. I mean, literally the line of kings all the way and queens all the way to King Charles III right now.
Yeah, so, I think there's some give or take there. There's some biological change throughout the lineage,
of course.
But
if you, they're
William
not all from the
Orange
same person.
Like that.
They're not. There's. I think the house has changed several times. But the if you were to go to, which I actually did relatively recently, if you were to go to one of our royal areas like Windsor or Buckingham Palace, and you go to the gift shops, you'll see tapestries of like every English king and queen ever, and it always starts at this date, 1066.
Yeah,
that's how important it is.
It shouldn't really start with Alfred the Great though, in like the 870s.
It should, yeah. No, I agree.
Because he's like the main. Yeah, I mean, we'll come to discussion later on the episode about like the most influential and impactful kings in history, but like, you know, William the Conqueror is basically right there. And you know, interestingly, Joe, William the Conqueror is the inspiration for, and you probably know this, the inspiration for Game of Thrones is Aegon the Conqueror.
I do know that, yeah. I do.
Expecting more of a reaction.
I'm sorry, man. I'm a huge Game of Thrones nerd, man. I'm gonna fucking tell you way more than that. I knew all of that. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a movie.
The War of the Five Kings is Wars of the Roses.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So
fucking sound less unimpressed. I know you know, but give it a bit of showbiz. Like,
wow, really? Aegon the Conqueror. Wow,
that's the reaction I want.
Oh, the Conqueror there. The Conqueror. It all makes sense.
Yeah. But our William the Conqueror didn't have 3 dragons and 2 sister wives.
Yes. 2 sister wives, yeah.
With their Valyrian steel swords. What are the names of them, Joe?
I don't know this. I know Dark Sister's one of them.
Dark Sister,
I don't know the name. Dark Sister's the one that Daemon has in House of the Dragon.
That's what Visenya had,
yeah.
I believe.
Oh my god, this is so nerdy. If you're not getting Thrones out, you go, what the fuck? You know, there's a movie coming out next year about that topic. And all the fan fictions are like, Aegon should be played by Henry Cavill.
Wait, there's an Aegon the Conqueror film coming out?
Yeah, there's
really?
The first
way.
Ever. Yeah, there is the first ever Game of Thrones movie.
That's really exciting.
Oh well, let's go, mate. You and me, we'll talk about it on the pod. We'll bring a camera in. We'll bring it in. We'll do a live episode.
I'll give you a hand shandy underneath the popcorn bucket.
No, what the fuck? You didn't have to go that way. What did you do? We were doing great. And now you
okay.
Now you just made a
let's move on. So you're right. So the William the Conqueror is it's essentially the Battle of Hastings is the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England, and the most important thing that comes out about the Hastings is the formation of English as a language, because it comes from a mix of French, which is William of Normandy, and Old English, which existed before in Anglo-Saxon England. So probably the most like important thing that comes out of this entire battle is not the changing of the dynasty or the changing of the royalty, the monarchy in England. It's the creation of English, which is the most widely spoken language in the world. You know, imagine if it wasn't. Imagine if it was still like, you know, Old English or French. Then it might not be. It could be Spanish. Fuck that. Who the fuck wants to speak Spanish?
Mate,
not me.
Now you I am so rock hard right now. You're talking to me about like language and how important it is, and oh man,
yeah, I knew that would keep you going.
I love that type of stuff. You're so right. You are so right, because until the French king of Normandy came over,
you come to embellish.
until the French king of Normandy came over, we were speaking, you know, all that old English, the kind of blah, 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 kind of sounds that you just kind of got no clue what's going on.
Almost.
And then it's kind of Simslishy, and then suddenly the Frenchies arrive and they start giving you words like boeuf for beef, and you're like, oh my god, there's more. We could have the greatest language ever if we meld these together. You know, we just had a bit of the Viking stuff as well. Like the Vikings have given us a bit of language, and obviously we'd had a bit of Greek as well before that, and now we're just splicing in a bunch of French, Latin. I mean, name a better language than English?
I can't. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
I tried to have a think. I really thought long and hard, and I decided there isn't one. There is no better language than the language
I've edited it out, but Zach actually thought about that for a solid 2 minutes and 23 seconds.
And also, interestingly, we're discussing the Battle of Hastings in the run-up to the Bayeux Tapestry, which depicts the 1066 Norman invasion and Battle of Hastings going on display at the British Museum. It's coming to London for the first time in 1,000 years from the 10th of September 2026. So if you want to go see the Bayeux Tapestry, get your tickets using code Pint-Sized 15.
I was thinking, like, are you sponsored by them? What the fuck? British Museum sponsoring you? I'd like to see that, by the way.
Yeah, I think we should go and do some TikTok videos, because that's how we cash in on our historical interest.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Let's dive into a quiz, Joe. We made a constant feature of having quizzes in our podcast now. So this is the first one of the day. I think there's one more, but basically just one big one smaller one later. Can you name me, Joe? Now, I don't know how good your monarchical knowledge is, but the last 5 English monarchs from most to least recent.
Oh, our last 5 kings and queens.
Last 5 kings and queens. That's all I'm looking for.
Last 5? I mean, that should be quite simple. So
I have a feeling you're not going to make it simple.
So what? No. So obviously there's Charles III that we have right now. Good old sausage fingers. Then we've got the Queen. Don't need to say anymore. Just the Queen.
The Queen.
And then
Elizabeth
before that,
II.
it was the one before that was King George the Sixth.
Ooh, you're doing better than I thought you did.
Yeah, and then before him was not King George the Fifth, because it was his brother, who was King Edward the fourth. King Edward the Fourth. Seventh? There's been eight. There's been 8 Edwards. What the fuck? He was holding his fingers up. What? There's been 8 Edwards in our monarchy.
8 Edwards,
I did not realize that.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I got that number wrong. And then after Edward, who was the one that ran off with an American.
Oh,
Shame on you.
Shame.
No.
Shame.
We're joking, Americans.
Shame.
We're
No,
joking.
I'm not joking. I'm not joking. Shame on him.
Genuinely shame on him, though, because he ended up treating... No, seriously, he ended up treating, a fun fact, with the Nazis. He met with Himmler and tried to sell out the king, his brother, King George VI, so that he could get back on the throne. So he is actually a total rat, and shame on him. But then what before him was their dad, who was King George V. Am I right?
How far back can you go? Like, because that is you've got them all right, but like, you know, keep going if you can keep going.
Well, before that was his dad, which was King George IV. Shit.
The other name.
King Edward VII.
Yeah, that's the one. And then before King Edward VII.
And then it's the Queen Victoria.
God, you're good at this. You're good at the monarchy, aren't you? Well done.
That's I'm actually such a monarchist. You've never known this about me, but I fucking gaggle for the royal family, man.
That is disgusting. Right, well done, Joe. God save the king.
Disgusting.
God save the king.
God save the fucking king, dude. After Queen Victoria, before Queen Victoria, I don't know. My guess would be King. Let's throw in a Charles.
I don't know. I don't have it.
Oh, you don't know? For fuck's sake. I've gone further than your blood knowledge.
Good job. So, where do we begin, Joe? Because there's a few places here you can begin. I'll basically first talk about the history of England up until 1066. Talk about the characters involved, Hardrada, Godwinson, William. We'll talk about Stamford Bridge, the Battle of Stamford Bridge, of course, not the Chelsea Stadium, shithole. And the lead up to Hastings, before finally descending on Hastings, and the effects of the beginning of Northern rule. So, you know, we'll get there in a roundabout way. Hastings will be last on the agenda. So if you want to skip to the end now, just jump forward about 30 minutes. But you can't. So it's a really interesting before then. I think actually Hastings is probably the least interesting part of this entire episode. So stick, because what happens right next is going to be the most interesting. It's not. It's not. I'm just keeping you hooked in. So let's start with England. In the early Middle Ages, you have the Saxon invasion of Britain following the breakup of Roman Britannia. It's understood by historians that the Saxons come to England because it promises of fantastic crops and livelihood. And England was famously divided up into 7 separate kingdoms. Joe, can you name those kingdoms?
I can. Wessex, Sussex. No, not all of them. Wessex, Sussex, Northumbria. Oh, you wanker.
You're doing badly here.
Nussex for North Sussex.
Wessex, Essex, Sussex, Kent,
Essex,
Mercia,
Kent.
East Anglia, and Northumbria. Those are the 7 kingdoms.
Should be better.
The Germanic tribes that have arrived in England, the Saxons, increase in number and settle in the various parts of the country, and they begin fighting each other almost constantly. But by 850 AD, they've kind of been consolidated into 3 larger Anglo-Saxon kingdoms: Northumbria, Mercia, and Wessex. Go, Joe.
Hot take. I think this is where we went wrong as a society. I am properly of Anglo-Saxon descent. However, I personally believe
You're too
that
Roman, bro. You got spawned from one of them.
we should have kept the Romans going, man. We should have kept the Roman rule. We had good, solid aqueducts and everything else when they were here. We don't mind the Celts. The Celts can stay. If we don't, I'm saying that purposely because we just did an episode where we genocided the Celts. So let's just pretend, let's forget about that. But the Anglo-Saxons, ever since they've come in, we should have closed our borders then. We should have stopped the boats coming in from those Anglo-Saxons.
Stop it.
Because
put the Navy in the water and blast out the Anglo-Saxons from the channel.
Ever since the Anglo-Saxons have come, it's been nothing but trouble.
That's true.
Obviously,
true.
The Vikings as well, but the Vikings are cool, so I'll let them live.
Yeah, and this is all after 793 AD when the Vikings famously come to England and do what at somewhere, Joe? Go on.
They raided the chapel church of Lindisfarne or something.
Close.
Lindisfarne.
Lindisfarne, well done. Yes,
Yeah.
they raid Lindisfarne Monastery, and that begins the entanglement of Anglo-Saxon history with Viking history. And we covered the Vikings in a nice episode. We had drinking horns.
We did actually, yeah. Where
It
are
was
they?
it was a very good
Well,
episode. I think everyone really enjoyed that one. Another one of
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
excellent past episodes.
Definitely one of your top eps. The funny thing is that like I think people really enjoy the ones where we talk about civilization. So when we talk about the Romans or the Greeks, or we talk about the Vikings, I think that's just like
not the Japanese and the Koreans. Just-
But we haven't done the Koreans. Oh,
No,
we did
no.
North Korea. I suppose we did North Korea as a civilization.
I guess so.
That didn't do as well. But yeah, it's fun to chat about what people are like.
we
you
got
know?
a super xenophobic listenership.
I know.
Anyone
If it's
that's
not European,
anyone that's not
they
white,
spit
no
on
one
it.
gives a fuck
Yeah.
about them. No, I'm not gonna accuse you listeners of xenophobia. I'm sure you're not, because you're listening to such cultured gentlemen right now.
Islamophobia, though. Now that you guys have a lot to answer for.
What?
Well, no, let's test
What are you
it.
talking
Let's test
about?
it. Well, I tell you what. Next episode, we're going to do.
Shit,
the
we haven't done.
Crusades.
We haven't done. No. We haven't done one episode on like a Muslim or Islamic leader, or like Islamic society. That we should
must
got to
have.
do one.
No, we must have. Oh,
No, we haven't.
Wait, are we the
We
racists?
the baddies hands.
We're the racists. Wait, have we not?
No. I really want to do Saladin, so I'll do that for the next episode.
Yeah, well, we just got to do Crusades. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
got to jump
I can
in
either do
and
Muhammad or Saladin, but I think Saladin's a bit more fun.
Stuff Muhammad. There's billions of them. That's not racist, by the way. I know you're going to accuse me of being racist. That's not racist, because it's true. There are billions of Muhammads in the world. So I'm not saying, I'd rather do Saladin. I'd rather do Saladin. That's my point.
Oh god!
nothing else to-
Oh god! All right. Well, excuse my co-host. Let's get back to it.
Excuse my co-host.
Let's
As if
get
you're
back-
not fucking anti-Semitic every
no,
episode.
No. We're not going there. Wait. Right, so after the Vikings sack Lindisfarne, you have the great heathen army that invades England, capturing large parts of Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, in 865. The establishment of Danelaw between Alfred the Great, King of Wessex, and Guthrum, the Danish lord. Following Alfred's victory at the Battle of Edington, he begins creating burhs to defend England, mobilises troops and resources, and consecutive Wessexian kings conquer more Danish land in England, bring it under English fold. So Anglo-Saxon unity seems to be on the horizon. And Athelstan becomes king, and he becomes the first king of all England, which was not really all England, but most of it, besides some parts up north. He then dies, and the Vikings begin taking back some power in 939. But by 970, King Edgar becomes... We're getting very close. We're jumping 50 years at a time. We're getting very close to
That's fine.
1066 at a time.
That's good.
By 970, King Edgar becomes king of England, and he's backed heavily by the church as unified currency, a monastic way of life, and England becomes very religion-focused. He then dies, sparking succession crisis in the late 10th century. Then you get Svein Forkbeard, who's a Dane, who invades England again and takes the throne, which then leads to the rule of Canute after the unification of the English and Danish crowns under him in 1016. He then divides
Great name.
England into earldoms allocated to Danish nobles, but very importantly, he gives one Englishman an earlship, and that is Godwin of Essex, the father of King Harold II of Godwin,
Wow, he's the
Harold
father.
Godwinson. So
Wow.
that's where it is. They're very Anglo-Saxon Danish vibes, and that is a short history of England, all the way from the Viking Anglo-Saxon invasions to Harold Godwinson. There's a clear path there, The Danes being in power literally is exactly to Godwin, which is Harold's father, becoming a powerful, rich noble, which leads to Harold Godwinson being in a position to become king later.
I guess we've actually spoken this before, so it's not like I really need to be surprised at it. But I guess that kind of means that the Vikings were the most powerful force in the region. Obviously, they were, because they had to get concessions. They said, "Hey, have your region, have your Danelaw, whatever."
Yeah.
But in thinking about it, I think it's underestimated how much influence they really had, because they could have, if they just continued. Was it really possible for any of them to stop them?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Bear in mind, they're also like warring internally as well. Like they're just clans, really. They're like, they're sort of unified towards like the 10th century and like the late 9th century, but really the Great Heathen Army is like their best opportunity to do that, and they do that once again when Svein Forkbeard becomes king. If they are unified entirely and constantly, then yeah, they could have ruled much of like Western Europe. But they did do that though. Like, large parts of France were under Viking rule. Normandy itself,
including Normandy.
Yeah, Normandy itself is a Viking stronghold. So, like, they have this. They have land in. They basically have land in really important land in England and France
And Sicily.
But beyond that, and Sicily too. But they've also got
Istanbul.
Kiev and the Kievan Rus at the moment. That's also run by Vikings, and that's because technological advances favour them. So they have the longship and they have the shield wall, and they're also really tool strong, handsome men. So
Sexy,
they are
strapping
sexy men. Canute then dies in 1035. There's a bunch of kings between Canute and Edward the Confessor, but they're not really worth mentioning because they last for about 2 years, and who gives a fuck about them? Then you get Edward the Confessor, who's invited to return from exile in Normandy to become king, with the support of none other than Godwin, Earl of Essex. Then, on 1053, Harold Godwinson succeeds his father, and the childless Edward the Confessor dies on the 5th of January 1066, nominating Harold Godwinson as king after him, who accepts. This is part of a bargain that Godwin, Harold's father, had struck with Edward to support him on the throne. But it turns out that wasn't the only promise that Edward the Confessor had made for support. Oh, bear that in mind, Joe. And Harold, up until 1066, had been doing the rounds of the nobility and the clergy, trying to get in good with the people at the top. But he also, Harold Godwinson, apparently, according to the Normans, but of course they would say this, swore an oath of fealty to William, Duke of Normandy, and promised to uphold William's claim to the English throne. He was a cousin of Edward the Confessor, William. Harold is crowned king on January the 6th, 1066, by the Witenagemot. The Witenagemot. The Witenagemot. The Witten, I'm not going to say the Witenagemot, because I don't think I'm pronouncing it right. The Witten is a council of all the most important people who decide who becomes king or whatever. It's it's a committee meeting, yeah. They have Wittens all over the country, and Wittens are just these places where the powerful people get together to decide things. And this is, I guess, the most important Witten of them all. And Harold thinks, he remembers they kind of made an oath to William, but he goes, fuck that. What are those baguette-eating French wankers over the channel going to do about me becoming king? And he becomes king. And he has a long, peaceful, and prosperous reign with no challenge to the throne. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be really nice?
Unlucky, Eddie.
Got you. Yeah, in my eyes, I'm quite sad about this, because I do think Harold Godwinson was the king that never was, Even though he was king for a brief period of time, I think he deserved his shot, his fair shot. What's that, Joe? Can you hear that? If I had a heart, I could love you. If I had a voice, I could sing. Ah. The Vikings are coming, Joe. The Vikings.
Is that from the Vikings TV show?
It's the theme tune to the Vikings TV show, yeah.
I don't remember that.
No.
I mean, I hated that show, as our YouTube comments always reminds me, because I slacked off one of the Skarsgård brothers years ago. And they still getting angry Norwegians.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, where? Are they Swedish, the Skarsgårds?
The Skarsgårds, yeah, they're Swedish, yeah.
Yeah, Swedish. So I guess they're Swedish fans that slagging me off. I don't know who this Joe is.
I never heard of yo, but I know who Floki is.
Floki, great actor, but Joe, pussy. That's what they all say. All right.
Yeah.
So scared.
So the Vikings are coming again, Joe, which is why I sung the theme tune of the Vikings TV series. But it's not really the
Harold
Vikings.
Hardrada.
Yeah, it's not really the Vikings. It's sort of the Vikings, but it's kind of past the time. Yeah, this is actually the end of the Viking Age. I don't know if you remember the Viking episode, but King Harold Hardrada is the end of the Vikings. So King Harold III Hardrada Sigurdsson believes he has a claim to the throne of England. We've done a good portion and before a large segment on Harold in the Viking episode, but he is a fucking sick guy. He is a really cool bloke. This is obviously his not his last dance, because it imagines that it's greater than it was, because this wasn't really a great end to his story. But no. he was a very interesting man. He was a really great warrior and a very wealthy man. He spends 15 years in exile leading mercenaries in the Kievan Rus, and becomes chief of the Varangian Guard of the Byzantine Empire, which is the elite cream of the crop in one of the biggest empires in the world at that time. He led military campaigns in what was now modern-day Eastern Europe under Grand Prince Yaroslav the Wise. He becomes commander of the Varangian elite bodyguards, like I just said, and he fights Arab pirates in the Mediterranean and Asia Minor, which is basically the region of Turkey. He even conducts operations in Jerusalem. He commands troops in the conquest of Sicily, and after returning to Norway and becoming king in 1047, he launches a war against Denmark before claiming the Danish throne, although he never actually truly unites the kingdoms, but sues for peace with the Danish king. A really interesting story, a really decorated character in history who deserves to be remembered in the history books, because what a significant story that is. That's a crazy story, you know. He's basically a sellsword for 15. He's Bronn from Game of Thrones.
If what he does doesn't happen, then history in this country would probably be vastly different. But the fact that he joins this fray and makes it essentially a 1v1v1 on Rust,
It's a
it
triple
means
threat.
that he changes the game.
1v1 on Rust.
It's a 1v1 on
quick
Rust.
scopes only.
Yeah, quick scopes only. And now this literally changes the game. Like, from Harold Godwinson's point of view, suddenly, out of nowhere, he doesn't just have to deal with Normandy, but suddenly he's got this random ass Viking who's just like, actually, I'm gonna have a bit of that. And he just jumps in there, and you go, oh, piss off, mate. Like, the Vikings were a thing 200 years ago. Like, just chill so that I can go deal with this French knob. But instead, he's now got to just go and... So you've essentially got an Anglo-Saxon versus a Viking versus a Frenchie, and they're all wanted. They all fucking fancy each other. They all want to have a go. And, it's crazy how different this would have been if he'd actually thought, you know what? I'm actually okay in Norway. I'm actually quite content. I think I'll be all right. Imagine how different history might be. I mean, we wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but he's a ballsy bloke, Joe, and like ballsy blokes in history are ballsy blokes for a reason. They take like massive risks and massive gambles, and it pays off sometimes. And they are remembered as one of the greatest people ever, you know. And if he doesn't, he's not. He's just remembered as the bloke who lost, which is how he's remembered now.
So essentially, for the international viewers, because I do feel like we're doing this podcast with two different people. Firstly, Brits who understand all this story and are just here for the banter, because I doubt we're giving them any new information that they actually didn't know before.
Yeah, you're so
And
right. I should have retained this differently.
And our international listeners who probably don't know anything about this, in which case we should probably explain a little bit more. Essentially, in 1066, you have a three-way battle. Harold Godwinson is the Anglo-Saxon who's on the throne, but then you've got a Norwegian called Harold Hardrada, same first name, Harold, who's coming over to fight. And you've got William the Bastard of Normandy, who wants to change the Bastard to the Conqueror because that sounds way more cool, and he's planning to come up from France. That's why it's a 1v1v1 on Rust.
Yeah, you're right. I think I really have assumed way too much knowledge of our listener base in this one, which I'm probably fair to 50% of them, but there's a good percent of them which will not have heard this story. So yeah. You're exactly right. We're looking
That's
at
why
this.
I'm here, bro.
Yeah, we're looking at this story through the eyes of Harold Godwinson, who is the current king of England, and the challenges to his throne from, you know, like you said, the Norwegians and the Normans in France. So that's where we are, and then we're currently in 1066. And it starts to happen. Everything that's gearing up starts to happen. So King Harold III Hardrada Sigurdsson cites his claim to the English throne using a 1038 agreement between his former co-ruler Magnus the Good and former short-term English king Harthacnut. Harold Godwinson's brother Tostig, who has lost land to his now king brother Harold Godwinson, approaches Harold Hardrada to support a Norwegian. It's getting very confusing for me as well. He approaches Harold Hardrada to support a Norwegian invasion of England against his now king brother, Harold Godwinson. The Harolds are at each other's throats. It's Harold versus Harold right now. Instead of saying Harold going further, I'll say Hardrada and Godwinson. Hardrada begins assembling his fleet in March 1066 and completes it in September. And by the start of September, almost 10,000 Norwegians and Tostig's English supporters in hundreds of ships arrive off the coast of northeastern England. They begin advancing on York, and on the 20th September, they defeat Edwin and Morcar, the Earls of Mercia and Northumbria, at the Battle of Fulford, before taking York. Harold Godwinson, our boy, our sweet, sweet king, the king who never was, rip, hears of this, and he marches north to face Hardrada towards the Derwent River, where a wooden bridge crossed the water.
May I just say, by the way, I love that for our boy Harold Godwinson. You made the right choice there. You relined it. You just went straight there. That's great. If you're not clued in on British geography, London to York is a pretty sizable distance. I mean, that's not like, you know, it's not like he's just having to fight across 185 miles, and that's obviously with an army marching, infantry marching. So that is a long, long journey to take. I mean, it's not like it would take weeks, but the point is that your army is going to have to expend a lot of energy to just get there to deal with this northern threat.
No, it should take weeks. He does it in 4 days.
Oh, you mean that type of journey should take weeks?
Yeah,
but he
that
just does it
journey is a
super
long
quick.
journey. His troops are covering like 35, 40 miles a day in marching with like armor on. They're not heavily armored. They haven't even got many cavalry units. They're literally on foot marching towards York from London or wherever they are in the south to the Stamford Bridge battle site.
I imagine it was probably quite hot as well because this is in September, or is it?
Yeah, September.
October?
So if it's anything
September.
like now, it's fucking
This
boiling.
heat wave.
So Harold Godwinson marches his army 185 miles north up the M1 in only 4 days, taking the Norwegians completely by surprise. The Norwegians didn't even know that the English army were coming to face them until they literally see them come into view.
I didn't know that. They didn't expect it. Wow.
It's a smart move. Smart move.
Fair play,
Yeah,
Harold.
his troops are utterly exhausted, but well done. Smart tactician there. Now, apparently, and this is an incredible story, and I'm not sure if it's true at all, given that it was written in a 13th century Icelandic saga, and the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle makes no mention of this incident. But Harold Godwinson might demonstrate the highest levels of aura ever generated before a battle begins. A lone rider, according to this 13th century Icelandic saga, approaches Harold Hardrada and Harold Godwinson's estranged brother Tostig shortly before the battle starts. The rider doesn't give his name, but offers Tostig his earldoms back if he would abandon the Norwegian king in favour of his brother. Tostig asks what King Harold Godwinson would offer to Hardrada in return. The rider replies that King Hardrada would receive 6 feet of ground, or as much more as he needs. A grave in English soil. King Hardrada was impressed by the rider, who was incredibly bold in front of him, despite being in the face of such a well-known, dangerous, and internationally esteemed military commander that Hardrada is. He asks Tostig who the rider was. Tostig replies that the rider was none other than King Harold Godwinson himself. It must be complete bullshit, but it is. What?
From this poem, you get the impression that Harold Godwinson went up to the Norwegian king
this is
himself.
a story in the saga,
and they believe that he himself sent the message. We will kill you.
No,
if you
he
move
is
any
the
further."
rider. He is the rider, and he goes right up to him. And Tostig, who's his brother, knows this the whole time.
I don't believe it. I'm sorry.
No, of course, I don't believe.
I know you want to. You want
I
all
want to
the
look for
credit.
fantasy and things, Joe.
Yeah, it's not that. It's just I just don't believe it. I don't think he's that much of a Chad.
Joe, before we start talking about the Battle of Stamford Bridge, can you name for me, in less than 1 minute, as many major conflicts fought on English or British soil as you can? I'll give you 1 minute, starting from now.
Well, oh, hold on. Major conflicts that happened on British land. Okay, well, firstly, this war. So, what do we call this? The 1066 Battle of Succession, I guess. Is that the name of the war?
Sure.
The English Civil War.
Yep.
The War of the Roses.
Yep.
The Battle of Britain in 1940.
Yep. World War II. It's just 4.
World War One never was fought over Britain, or was it? But
well, the Zeppelins did drop bombs on British soil.
Ah, okay. Also, are we talking about British Isles? Or are we
you got
talking
20
about
seconds, Joe. Come on.
Are we talking about British Isles, or are we talking about other places as well?
Yeah.
British Isles. Oh, what about the Spanish Armada? Elizabeth I.
Not on English soil.
No, that was on the channel. That's water.
I'll give you 10 more seconds.
Scotland. It's all the battles of Scotland.
Yeah.
What are the names? Robert the Bruce and William Wallace and all those
that's 6.
bastards. Did Irish ever fight? I don't know. There you go. That's
Time. You got 6. So I've got a list here of all the major conflicts that have been fought on English or British soil. I've got about 15 here maybe. But I've got the Roman invasion of Britain, Boadicea's rebellion, Anglo-Saxon conquest, Great Heathen Army / Viking invasion, Norman Conquest, Scottish Wars of Independence, Barons' War, Welsh revolts, Peasants' revolts, Glywyndir's uprising, Wars of the Roses, English Civil War, the Jacobite Risings, World War One and World War Two.
Okay, quick question. Did you take this quiz from ChatGPT?
No.
It stunk of a ChatGPT quiz, that. Stunk of it, man.
Well, it was one of my classics. Okay, anyway, back to the episode, but not the Battle of Hastings, the Battle of Stamford Bridge. That's where we are right now. Harold Godwinson's English army advanced towards the surprised Norwegians on the other side of the Derwent River. But they need to get across a wooden bridge to cross the water. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicles suggests that one of the Norwegians, armed with a battle axe, blocks the crossing and on his own holds up the entirety of the English army. He apparently cuts down more than 40 Englishmen and was only defeated when a crafty, tricksy little English soldier goes under the bridge and stabs upward with his spear.
Now, this one I do believe. Again, we probably don't have much evidence for it, and also it kind of plays in, but it just, it plays into that kind of Viking mentality. That's kind of that berserker mentality that Vikings could just had superhuman strength and could do something that you wouldn't be thought possible. I don't know about you, Zach, but when I hear this story about one Viking holding a bridge as, tens and tens of English troops try to take him on, it does. I can't help but imagine this Erling Haaland.
You can see it.
Man City
You can
shirt.
see it, can't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see his
It's
blonde
just,
hair waving.
His blonde hair,
like he's
light blue Man City kit, and he's just there, just slashing away.
he's
but
just
with a Viking.
He's crashing English shields with like one blow.
Yeah.
And like you can imagine he's just like in a frenzy, done some shrooms, like absolute berserk here.
Yeah.
Like he's just going.
This is
wow, wow.
Aren't we
roar,
so glad
roar."
aren't we so glad we're in the modern world we live in? Because if this was, 1,000 years ago,
It'd be
then
us
we would
two
be
against
seeing.
Haaland.
You and me would be two of Harold Godwinson's troops, and we'd
Yeah.
be marching up. We'd be exhausted after several days' ride, and we'd get there, and then we'd see Erling Haaland standing on a bridge with a huge battle
Fuck
axe, and
that!
we go,
Fuck that!
and we go,
I'm not
"Fuck
going
that,
there.
man, I'm not-
That is just
I'm not
happening. I'm
touching
going to
that."
turn around dessert.
Absolutely not. I was like, Zach wants to go first. Zach says he's got it. But thank God we're now in the position we are, where we can enjoy these athletes perform football and stuff like that, instead of watching them kill tens of our kind on bridges before someone else stabs them in the arsehole.
It would be quite nice being a longbowman at Agincourt, though.
Yeah, but it would have been terrifying. Also,
it would have been awful. But
Also, they were starving.
Like Frenchies.
That's how desperate the situation at Agincourt was. We were so on the back foot at that point. We were in French land still. We hadn't even got back to England. So, from our perspective,
Yeah, no, I know. I did an episode on it.
No, yeah, that's true. You did. From our perspective, it's like, well, yeah, to be a longbowman slicing down these French cavalry would have been cool, but at the same time, we've been fucking tired, dude. We've been like, oh my god, like if we don't keep shooting, we're all gonna die.
And another.
It's like, mate, I'm starving. What's
Yeah,
for
and
dinner,
they're firing thousands of arrows every minute. Anyway, this one crazy berserker holds up the entire English army. This, while heroic and not necessarily true, actually, we don't know. It's just in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, so we can assume it's fairly true, but we don't know for a fact yet. It gives Hardrada's Norwegian army enough time to form a shield wall and brace for the impact of 15,000 Englishmen coming at them. Hardrada's army numbers about 10,000. The English do the same as the Vikings. They have the same sort of military doctrine. It is shield, wall, and hold. So the English lock their shields and charge too. So they both come together in the centre. This locking of shield walls. It must be mental. Like tiny, tiny space. Really rigid, strong lines of soldiers. Thousands of them. Just past this water, packed together in this tiny field. And this battle goes on for hours. But by the end of the day, the poorly prepared Norse army's lines break, and the English troops force their way through the shield wall, outflanking the Norse, and annihilate them in their thousands. And King Hardrada, who had fought all the way from Norway to Russia for the Byzantine Empire around the Mediterranean, is killed when an arrow pierces his windpipe. Oh! Just like that.
Crazy.
According to some historians, the field around the site of the battle has been described as white, because so many soldiers died in such a small area that the ground was covered in sun-bleached human bones for up to 50 years after the battle. And it would look like something out of a horror film. Like it was a tiny battlefield, a tiny stretch, and thousands of army soldiers bashing against each other. It would have been mental.
But you know who the true ghost of that battle was? And this is very left field, so please indulge me. You know who it was?
The one guy that sticks his spear up.
No. The Romans, because they were the ones that built the roads and the bridge that they would fight on. So you get
you don't know it's been built by the Romans.
Oh, but I do because Hadrian's Wall is further up. So everything there is built by the fucking Romans, dude. So just to say,
they are the Dark
that
Ages,
moment,
right? So like, you can
that special moment that happened
was
wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the bloody Romans. So you can thank them once again, as we so often try to do on the Pint-Sized History podcast. Thank you to
Romans. Thank you to the Romans.
Because if it wasn't for them, that battle would have been really dull. They would have fought in some random forest and no one would remember it. But instead, you get the sick
such an
bridge.
Italian simp, aren't you?
I'm such an Italian Roman. Simp.
Yeah, where they from? King Harold Godwinson then strikes a truce with Hardrada's sons, Olaf and Paul, and they only need 24 of the original 300 ships they sailed on to carry the survivors back to Norway. So, 90% of their army, more than that, 92% of their army, something like that, is dead.
How can you try and reason that? Like, imagine you travel with an invading army. You go to a place, and then there's literally less than 10% of you that return.
Yeah, we got fucked up. Yeah, sorry, Helga.
Yeah.
We got absolutely fucked up, mate. Can't bring you back any gold or jewellery or slaves.
Lads. They'd be like, what happened?
Whoa,
Jesus.
that escalated quickly.
But I guess the Vikings are kind of used to that because they're always sailing off somewhere and fighting and then coming back. So
very true.
I guess they're
usually with slaves and bounties, though.
Usually with straight dubs.
The reason why it's really important to mention the Battle of Stamford Bridge is because the Battle of Hastings only happens 3 weeks after this battle is fought. So the Battle of Stamford Bridge is fought around the 28th of September, I think it is. And by the 13th of October, King Harold Godwinson is engaging William of Normandy in Hastings in the south. So that's why the Battle of Stamford Bridge is so important to the entire story. It's a 1v1v1, like you said, and one of the opponents has disconnected from the Rust map.
Yeah.
And it is now the server. Yeah. It is now two people with interventions quick scoping each other. So in the background of all this, there is a French bloke, a French duke, if you like, named William of Normandy, who has his own grand designs on the English throne. So I'm not sure if you know this, Joe, but can you tell me which key character from the TV series The Vikings and actual human history is an ancestor of William of Normandy?
I do know the answer to this. It is Rollo.
Yes, it's Rollo in the show Ragnar's
Yes.
brother. He's played by the amazing actor Clive Standard, who is possibly my favourite character from the series. He is a handsome, striking, buff man. I would love to look like that, but I don't think I could look plausibly any less like that. There is a scene in the Vikings which I remember really vividly, and it is Rollo. I think it's the first episode of season 2, and he's in leather trousers with no t-shirt on, and he jumps over the shield wall to engage spoilers. Ragnar and his forces behind the shield wall, and he just jumps over raw, and it's so fucking it's sexy. It's real sexy.
Even though earlier we were talking about how I still get slated for a clip that is still on YouTube. Literally go and search it. Viking. What's the name of that clip? Joe hates the Vikings.
Yeah, why the Vikings is a terrible TV show or something like that.
And you literally go search on YouTube, and you'll just see literally tons of comments slagging off both of us, but mostly me because I'm the one that's saying the bad stuff. I will say, I actually quite like that TV show when certain characters are on screen, and Rollo is one of them. I think that Vikings is at its best when you have Rollo and Ragnar and Lagatha, his wife.
Lagatha. Hello, Lagatha.
Shield Maiden. That's when the show is excellent, and I think it's really, really cool and really brilliant. It's the other stuff that I find so frustrating about it. And I agree with you, Rollo is an awesome character, and I knew that because, spoilers if you haven't seen Vikings, Rollo in real life ends up I was going to say colonizing, but in a way it kind of is. Does he become the mayor of France?
If you like to wait,
mayor of France, Paris.
The next line I've got here. So the Vikings conquer Paris at the sea. They sack Paris at the siege of Paris, in the 900s. I don't know if it's necessarily related, but Charles the Simple of France, to stop the Viking invasions and the Viking attacks on France, gives Rollo, who is a really important Viking leader in actual history in 911 AD, Rouen, which is a county in Normandy. This later becomes the Duchy of Normandy. So Rollo is given Normandy to stop Viking invasions against France, basically. Normandy...
And that was only 900 AD or whatever. So surely William the Conqueror, therefore, is only 4 generations? A grandson or something?
Life expectancy was far less, right? And people having kids earlier. So it'd be the great grandson of Rollo, something like that.
I don't think it'd be that much.
I think it's 5, 5 or 6. There's a few Richards and Roberts. It's Robert I, Robert II, Richard I, Richard II, and then it's Rollo. So anyway, this Duchy of Normandy literally translating to Northmania, meaning land of the Northmen. which is quite fascinating, isn't it? Normandy in French is like, land of the Vikings, basically. So the settlers there assimilate, they stop speaking Norse, they stop worshipping Norse gods, and they essentially become Franks. They train in Frankish military doctrines like heavy cavalry and castle building, and William of Normandy, appreciates that, and he becomes obsessed with castles. When he takes over and conquers England, he has a fixation on castles and motte and baileys, and they start building them everywhere. William was born in 1028 in Normandy at Falaise, the son of Robert I, who became the Duke of Normandy on the 6th of August 1027. William's father Robert was accused of murdering his brother Richard III for the title. Whether you believe that a slimy little Frenchman could murder their brother or not to usurp the throne is up to you. I couldn't comment on that. William was actually a bastard born to a maid in his father's household, so faces succession challenges to the duchy his entire life. By 1035, William's father dies, leaving him as the Duke of Normandy, but he's not even 10 when he's pronounced his father's heir. So he has to hide from place to place, and then fights against, when he does come of age, fights against his cousins and other rivals. He wins big battles against the French King Henry I of France. He invades several other local counties, and the balance of power in the region towards 1066 starts to shift towards William. He also marries Matilda of Flanders, and by 1066, he starts making preparations for the invasion of England. He calls a council together to discuss the risks involved and receives consent from Pope Alexander II for the invasion.
Man, he got the Pope involved.
Yeah, you have to. You have to get him when you're conquering Catholic lands, I guess. You don't want to get excommunicated. Excommunicado. And throughout the 1066 summer, he assembles his army and a huge fleet, with some sources suggesting at the time, the Norman sources suggest it was as large as 3,000 ships, but really it was nothing close to that. I mean, if Harold Hardrada's fleet was 300 ships, and he had roughly the same amount of men as William, it would be about 400 ships at most, probably. And on the 28th of September, while King Harold Godwinson is fighting King Harold Hardrada up in York, William's invasion force conduct a reverse D-Day and land at Pevensey Bay that day.
How crazy is that? Like, genuinely, how crazy is that?
Very, very crazy.
It's just the double header of literally having the reverse D-Day, in the sense that you've literally got 890 years later or 880 years later, you've got one of the most famous moments in human history doing the complete opposite. But this is such a crucial moment, and it happens at the exact same time that he's already having to deal with the Vikings. He didn't plan that. There's no, he doesn't have a messenger that's saying they're fighting. Go, 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 go. He's timed it perfectly.
And just to expand on that point about the reverse D-Day, it is literally like, King Harold Godwinson is Hitler fighting the Russians in the east, and then he has to turn around to the west because the Allies have launched onto Normandy soil. So I guess it is really a reverse D-Day.
Yeah, which I'm sure that Eisenhower and a bunch of them said during their speeches.
We're William the Conqueror. We're William the Conqueror right now.
We're William the Conqueror. We're doing exactly that. So it
I'm
is.
sure someone said that in the room. I'm sure, at some point, an English general might come in and be like, "We're basically
Monty."
Yeah, very Monty. So
just had to get his beak in there and go.
Hello, chaps. Did you know this is reminiscent of King William the Conqueror back 1,000 years ago?
And the fucking Patton's like, "Oh, brother, this guy stinks!" Just fucking whacks him across.
William's invasion force consisted of roughly 12,000 men, 3,000 of which are cavalry. Another 3,000 were ranged soldiers like archers and crossbowmen, and the rest were infantry. Harold Godwinson was badly exhausted and beaten, physically and mentally. They were the victors, but his army are battered and bruised.
But against Vikings, that's not easy.
No. And they begin the long march south to take on the Normans. They march south, covering roughly 27 miles per day, over 200 miles, before arriving near William's Castle on the 13th of October. William has landed on the 28th. Gone to Hastings, and then constructed a castle in 2 weeks' time. Unlike Stamford Bridge, Harold Godwinson could not surprise the Normans. And also, unlike Stamford Bridge, he has less men than his opponent, with only around 8,000 troops, mostly infantry, with a number of slingers and spear throwers and archers. But the bulk of the force is infantry, as opposed to the French, who are made up of cavalry and archers, as well as infantry. It's combined arms warfare against static dug-in defense.
And also, when you have a battle against a scary Viking army, you obviously lose the troops that die. But you also lose the troops that have been injured, like casualties. Imagine all the people there that need treatment. And you're going, even if they could fight, we have to travel such a long distance in such a short amount of time. We don't have time for you. So it's not just that like he's bringing a bruised and battered army straight back down south like before. He has to leave behind those that could fight if this battle was happening a few weeks later.
I just have a good feeling that the injured are still there. I bet you it's not like in the modern day.
I bet you they're not. I bet you they're not.
Yeah,
Bill's lost a leg.
Google
Bill's
AI
lost a leg. Let's carry him. He'll be useful. Let's bring this three-limbed man.
He's a superhuman.
Let's bring this three-limbed man. Let's carry him across the entirety of our country just so that he can sit there and watch the fight from the hill. No, you're leaving them behind. So you're leaving like several people that could end up helping later on.
Here's a fun fact about the American Civil War. You just reminded me of. But did you know that the first couple battles? They had spectators. People would like come in their chariots to like watch the fighting, not realizing they thought it would just be like a bit of fun, but they didn't realize that they'd see like some of the most horrible carnage that's ever existed on this planet in like a day. Because like the American Civil War and wars in like the Napoleonic age are disgustingly brutal, like cannibals,
and they're so
buckshots.
romanticized. So the average person doesn't understand the carnage that they're about to step
but
into.
It is horrible. Like people getting their limbs sawed off because, like, you know, you can't leave limbs injured because there's no antibiotics to deal with infections. You know, people just getting blown through by cannonballs and you know, getting.
Do you think we're going to touch the American Civil War?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I listened to Ken Burns' documentary on it, so I'm fascinated by it. And I will definitely be doing it at some point. Maybe not this season, but soon. So we finally arrived after all this time of beating around the bush, Joe, at the Battle of Hastings. And on a hilltop 7 miles from Hastings, Harold's forces sit. And at the far side of this valley are the Norman troops under Duke William of Normandy. It's the 13th of October. Both armies can see each other, and they've settled for the night. On the 14th of October, at dawn, Harold arranges his forces along the ridge. On the hilltop they were, in a defensive position, stretching for almost half a mile of pure shield wall. The Anglo-Saxons were in their shield wall, but the Norman troops have something that's a bit like command arms warfare, like I just said, with archers in the front, infantry behind, and cavalry in the rear. They're sort of like a fairly decent incline. So, like, you know, the English forces are at the top, and the Norman forces are at the bottom, but it's not, like, incredibly steep. It's just a gradient. Yeah. At 9 a.m. on the 14th of October, trumpets sound and the battle begins. William's armies need to make their way up the slope of this hill to get close enough to the English army to engage them with their archers and smash their lines. Harold's entire strategy is dependent on keeping his line unbroken, exhausting the Normans, and then smashing them as they panic and break, which is classic. You know, when they rout, you hit them hard and inflict maximum casualties. William attacks the line. His archers get close enough to engage the English shield wall, and they inflict huge casualties on the English line. But the line holds. William then instructs his cavalry, which, while being mobile, aren't like the heavy cavalry a few hundred years later that you'd imagine, like cataphracts. They're quite lightly armoured, they have swords, not lances, so they have to get close to their attacking. The cavalry aren't that much of a benefit here, but they are highly mobile. The cavalry are badly bloodied by the English hussars, so much so that they flee, and a number of English soldiers go after them, breaking ranks, because the majority of damage is done during these routs. William then commands his cavalry, with him at the helm, to counterattack, and they do this sort of cat and mouse throughout the day. They hit, they retreat backwards, they draw out the English line, they go back again, counter. He successfully does this 2 more times throughout the day, drawing the English soldiers out the line, pretending they're retreating, and then hitting them hard with force. And eventually, as the English shield wall and their strong defensive line begins to weaken, crumble, and break, King Harold Godwinson is killed, and according to the Bayeux Tapestry and English curriculums, by an arrow through his eye. It's an incredibly, like, romantic view of death, isn't it? It's like this, an arrow in the eye, that gets him. An arrow for the windpipe for Harold Hardrada, an arrow in the eye for Harold Godwinson. It's,
again, it's one of those things where you just kind of choose what you want to believe. So, kind of similar with the Viking. I can see it. I know it sounds dramatic as hell, but I can see it. I can see this idea that, like, an English king in the midst of this really close battle as well. Like, it could have gone either way at certain points. Out of nowhere, an arrow, and it just completely changes how it all goes. It's kind of nuts how many of these, especially early medieval battles, seem to be like You know,
Yeah.
in one moment, completely change.
And these medieval kings, these like Dark Age medieval kings, are like they're in the battle. They're fighting with their men.
Yeah.
Like they're not some of the later kings who are more commanders. They're literally there in the fighting, in the rough. Like King Henry V at Agincourt, he is in the mud fighting like Timothy Chalamet in The King. A great movie, by the way.
Legend.
And with Harold dead, the English army continued to fight on against all the odds, until eventually, with the day turning against them, they break and they flee. But the Normans ruthlessly pursued them with their highly mobile cavalry units, wiping out the majority of King Harold Godwinson's army. Around 9 hours after the fighting begins, William of Normandy is on his way to becoming William the Conqueror. The Normans take Dover, Canterbury, Winchester, before isolating a defiant London and then eventually capturing it. They take London, where he's eventually crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066, in Westminster Abbey. And in the weeks that followed, more and more English nobility surrender, swearing fealty to their new king. And eventually that nobility, despite surrendering and swearing fealty, is replaced with Norman nobility by the time the Domesday Book is published in 1086, which provides a census of the entire land. And England forever will be changed by the Norman influence on the country. Not only our language, but a huge amount of castles are erected, a strict hierarchical medieval class which is loyal to the crown, and a closely aligned English church to the Roman papacy. He quashes uprisings and rebellions, reshapes our architecture and society, and he possibly is one of the most influential kings in British history. And that is the story of the Battle of Hastings.
More than just influential, what he did was essentially change the game, right? Because what he managed to do was do what every other conqueror did, which was take over the country for yourself. But unlike so many of the others, he actually put clever things in place that meant that he wouldn't just be usurped a few years later himself.
No, he rules. He doesn't conquer, he rules. He conquers and rules.
Yeah,
like,
he's the great combination of being a good conqueror, but also being a good ruler. So if I remember correctly, a lot of the medieval castles that we were so important throughout the next 1,000 years of British history were then built by William. That's where they were birthed, because he recognized how useful castles would be to showing legitimacy, but also showing defense against anything that comes at him in the future.
It's like a system of logistics and networks, but like also stops you from having to fight like fields with like crazy melees. Sorry.
You think
it's
about
obvious, right? To build some castles.
It's obvious as like people that are studying history to see the difference between getting there and then actually being able to stay there. They're such vastly different things. I mean, if we can take so many different examples of this in, for example, Game of Thrones. Robert Baratheon was a great conqueror. He was not a great ruler. We talk about modern politics, and we say Donald Trump is a terrific campaigner. He is an outstanding campaigner in terms of being able to push his agenda and get himself out there, voices to the masses. But once he's in power, this is now the second presidency in a row that he has become the most unpopular US president in history. So, like, there's a fine balance being able to actually get there and then being able to keep it once you're actually there. And it's really interesting to see, like, when you do notice those people that are actually really good at both. And obviously it depends as well, like ruling in different senses. So, for example, Winston Churchill was a terrific wartime leader, but he was not a good peacetime leader.
Yeah.
But he was absolutely of that metric where you go, this was someone that could change the game for this country because he was good at both. He was good at pushing his agenda, and then once his agenda is actually in place, being able to implement it and not stuff up. Those are usually the ones that end up becoming the ones that we talk about for ages.
Yeah, even like taking like Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan, like they have immense, huge empires. But, you know, when they die, and Henry V as well, when they die, they've conquered these vast amounts of land. But when they die, because they haven't planned ahead enough, they leave like a fractured empire behind them, which means their work is for nothing. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I was thinking about who my favourite king was while I was doing this, because, you know, William the Conqueror is essentially the first of a long line of English kings, if you don't include like Alfred the Great and the people before him. But yeah, it just makes me think how much I wish Henry V lived a bit longer. Gone far too soon.
Did he die to an arrow as well? No, he survived.
No, he died of disease while on the campaign.
He survived an arrow when he was like 21, didn't he? And that's why you can only see one side of his face.
He had
the other side is he had a wound in his face.
He got hit in the fight against Owain Glyndwr and had to get it like surgically removed, like a really inventive piece of tech, which we talk about in the two-parter on King Henry V. So yeah,
We literally did one of is that the only time we've done just an English king, just straight up?
yeah,
Wow. Well, we got to do more of those.
yeah.
I was
Queen
thinking
Elizabeth
when now that you
first.
said your favorite king, he wasn't a good person, but I do love the story of Richard the Lionheart because
Yeah,
the
Crusader.
it's the only time that Britain like locked in and actually led a crusade, or rather helped lead a crusade. He still can lead the entire thing, but in general, we just sat back and let the French or whoever do it, and that's a bit embarrassing. But Richard the Lionheart actually stepped up and led in Jerusalem, like hundreds and thousands of miles away. So pretty cool. But he was also a bit of a dick, so he's not. Nobody's perfect. Wow, that was fun, Zach. That was a big one. That was a fun little
Mammoth episode.
escapade into it. Yeah.
Sorry it took so
Awesome,
long.
thank you for that.
Really could have done this a lot quicker. Could have done it in 45 minutes, but here we are, an hour in. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, be sure to review and like and follow and subscribe and tell everyone about us, like I always say. And you don't do. I mean, I noticed you aren't doing it. So make sure you go and do it. You there. You I'm looking at on the lens and talking to you in your ear. Go do it. Go now. Go now. Click now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
have a great rest of your day and see you all later next week.
See you for the next one. Yeah, you got it.
See
What are
you
laughing
next
about?
time. No, see you
next
later. See you next week. Bye bye.
I mean, they all work. Jesus Christ. All right, bye-bye.